Christabel Mary Harmsworth Bielenberg was a British woman in the German resistance to Hitler. This is her story. Christabel Mary Burton grew up in Totteridge in North London, which you can reach by taking a train on the Northern Line. Christabel was the second of 4 children to an Anglo-Irish family, and naming her relatives sounds like the guest list of an exclusive high society ball. Her father, Percy Collingwood Burton, was a lieutenant colonel in the British Army. Her mother, Christabel Rose Harmsworth, was the 12th child of the Harmsworth family, whose brothers included the owners of the Daily Mail and Daily Mirror newspapers, Alfred Harmsworth, 1st Viscount Northcliffe, and Harold Harmsworth, 1st Viscount Rothermere. Another brother was Cecil Harmsworth, 1st Baron Harmsworth. He was Under Secretary of State for the Home Department in 1915 and Under Secretary of State for Foreign Affairs between 1919 and 1922. He was elevated to the House of Lords in 1939. It could be argued that Christabel had a very good start to life. Her mother had been a rebel in her youth, and her daughter followed in her tracks. Instead of accepting a scholarship she'd won for Somerville College in Oxford, she decided to study singing in Hamburg in 1929. Her teachers included world-famous opera singers Elisabeth Schumann and Lotte Lehmann. Whilst in Hamburg, she met Peter Bielenberg, who was 2 years younger. Peter was the son of a lawyer, and he was following his father's footsteps too. He was studying law. His career course was no doubt planned at an early age: a lawyer, notary, or civil servant. In 1932, probably more out of curiosity than anything else, they went to a rally to hear Hitler speak. Within minutes, Peter had had enough, and he persuaded her to leave. He said, "You may think that the Germans are political idiots, Chris, and you may be right, but of one thing I can assure you, they won't be as stupid as to fall for that clown." Well, maybe the German people did not fall for the clown, but a group of wealthy conservatives did, and they steered Hitler into power. Peter and Christabel married in London in 1934. Peter hadn't yet finished his legal training. No doubt his parents wanted him to finish his studies before getting married, but both sets of parents were delighted. The couple had 3 children, Nick, John and Christopher. Christabel needed to become German in order to live in Germany, but the country did not accept joint nationality, so she had to give up a British passport in exchange for one with a swastika on the front cover. An official at the German embassy in London told her that she hadn't made a very good exchange. Both of them hated the National Socialist system. However, there was little they could do about it, except maybe in a small way. Their Hamburg paediatrician was Professor Bauer, but as a Jew he was no longer allowed to treat their children because of the Nuremberg laws, so they contracted him privately. Their opposition to the Nazis solidified further when one of Peter's clients was acquitted in a court of a political crime, but immediately abducted after the trial and taken to a concentration camp. After a while, they were so disgusted with the National Socialist system that they decided to go somewhere else. They visited the Australian outback, Africa and Canada. They looked at property in Ireland, where Christabel's roots were, and decided to emigrate to that country. However, they were dissuaded from doing so by their friend, Adam von Trott zu Solz. Adam was a college friend of Peter's, and he also worked in the law firm of Peter's father. Adam von Trott zu Solz came from a noble family which could document itself back to 1253. The family's ancestral homes are in the village of Solz and Eemshausen, now part of the town of Bebra. Many of his ancestors on both of his parents' sides had worked in public service. Adam von Trott zu Solz was born in Potsdam in 1909 as the fifth of 8 children. He studied at the Ludwig Maximilian University of Munich and the University of Göttingen. He travelled to the United Kingdom in 1929 and spent a trimester as a visiting student at Mansfield College in Oxford before returning to Berlin to finish his studies there. He began his legal traineeship at the district court in Nentershausen near Bebra, but interrupted this in October 1931 for 2 years of additional studies as a Rhodes Scholar at Balliol College, Oxford. Whilst there, he followed with alarm the situation at home in Germany. He attempted to form links between the British Labour Party and their counterparts in Germany. Adam von Trott learned about Adolf Hitler's appointment as Chancellor from an evening newspaper in Oxford. According to his friend Charles Collins, he immediately recognised the terrible disaster that had now befallen Germany, and also that his own future prospects had fundamentally changed. According to Collins, Trott viewed an open opposition as unrealistic for a long time, but considered it necessary to gather opponents of the regime. After graduating from Oxford, Trott continued his legal traineeship at the district court in Rottenburg an der Fulda, at the regional court in Hanau, and at the public prosecutor's office in Kassel. For the obligatory legal internship, which he completed between December 1934 and April 1935, he chose a firm in Berlin run by Jewish lawyers. This was followed by further traineeships at the Kassel District Court, in the administration of a Hamburg shipping company, and at the Kassel-Haier Regional Court. For 2 months, he also had to take part in a traineeship camp near Jüterbog that was introduced by the National Socialists for political, ideological and military drills. Despite considerable pressure, Trott refused to adapt to the new regime. He sent back the forms which he was supposed to commit to joining the Professional Association of the Association of National Socialist German Lawyers and the National Socialist German Workers' Party. He didn't bother filling them out. Because of his negative attitude towards the regime, which was also mentioned in a training certificate, Adam von Trott was not accepted as a government trainee, and his admission to the assessor exam was in jeopardy for a long time. In Berlin, Adam von Trott made contacts with opponents of the regime of various colours, from the conservative Edvald von Kleist-Schmetzin to socialist and communist underground fighters whom he actively supported. In October 1936, Trott passed his assessor exam. He applied to the British Rhodes Foundation to be allowed to spend the 3rd year of his scholarship in Beijing. His application was approved, and in the spring of 1937 he travelled to China via the United States, where he spent several months preparing for his research stay. The death of his father in October 1938 led to Adam von Trott's early return to Germany. In the following months he searched in vain for a suitable job without joining the Nazi Party. He persuaded his friend Peter Bielenberg not to leave Germany, but to do what he could for the German people inside the country. As a result, Peter got a job in the Reich Ministry of Economics and Trott a job in the Reich Foreign Ministry. The efforts of people such as Adam and Peter to prevent the outbreak of war through a diplomatic initiative designed to get the British government to stand up to Hitler failed. Christabel described the situation in August 1939 with British sarcasm. The German resistance fighters found no interlocutors in the London ministries because the traditional grouse hunt had begun with the glorious 12th on the 12th of August 1939. So there was no one around to talk to, as all the British people of any influence were killing grouse. In 1939 they bought a house in Falkenried in Berlin-Dahlem. They paid for it with foreign currency, and they bought it from a young Jewish couple who were thus able to use it to flee Germany. They were not the only people in the neighbourhood who didn't think much of National Socialism. Their neighbour, the wife of the German diplomat Otto von Wussow, was denounced in January 1942. Another friend, Marie-Louise Sarre, known as Puppy, was as secretary to the staff of Army Group Centre. She served the conspiracy against Hitler as an unobtrusive messenger between members of the resistance. She was friends with the lawyer Karl Langbein, who went to Switzerland to make contact with the OSS, the forerunner of the CIA. Karl Langbein was arrested on his return to Germany. Peter was sent to Norway in 1941 in order to set up a fish meal factory. Whilst he was away, other resistance members, Hans Oster, ensured that nothing became of Christabel and the children. In the summer of 1943, Christabel moved with the children to Rohrbach in the Black Forest because of the bombing. There they lived with a farming family, and Christabel was glad to be in the seasonal rituals of a simple agricultural life in which the war seemed, at least at this point, comfortingly remote. She made the long, perilous journeys to Berlin and kept in touch with von Trott, who by now in 1944 was determined that the Germans themselves should get rid of Hitler before the Allies do it for us, as he said. This is Grudziądz in northern Poland. It had been part of the Second Reich prior to 1918 and was occupied in the first days of World War II when it was annexed to the Third Reich and went back to its German name of Graudenz. Peter Bielenberg was sent here as the operations manager of an aircraft factory. Whilst in Grudziądz, Peter Bielenberg received the news from Trott zu Solz that he should report to Berlin as soon as possible. This was clear to him. A coup against the regime was in the making. Even if he was not in the inner circle of the plotters, his energies and organisational ability would be required in the building of a new Germany, liberated from the Nazis. The plot failed. The bomb left to kill Hitler in Rastenburg on the 20th of July failed to kill him. The coup d'etat in Berlin failed through bad planning and hesitation. The plotters and all those around them were picked up by the Gestapo. Peter Bielenberg was arrested on the 6th of August 1944 and taken to the Gestapo prison in Graudenz. From there he was sent for further questioning in the Gestapo prison at Berlin-Lehrterstrasse. And from there he was taken to Ravensbrück concentration camp at the end of August 1944. 3 Freiburg professors, Adolf Lampe, Konstantin von Dietzer and Gerhard Ritter, were also in the transport with him. In Ravensbrück the prisoners were largely isolated, but he did find out that Otto Schneewind and Hjalmar Schlacht were also among his cell neighbours. His close friend Adam Trott zu Solz was at the heart of the conspiracy. He had even been to see Himmler in the summer of 1943 in an effort to recruit him. Himmler didn't have him arrested, but then, after the failure of the bomb plot, Himmler had to decide which side he was on. He could no longer sit on the fence. He had Adam arrested. Adam was tried in front of the People's Court and executed on the 26th of August 1944. Karl Langbein was executed on the 12th of October 1944. Due to the Nazi policy of Sippenhaft, arresting the whole family of alleged opponents of the regime, Christabel and the children were placed under house arrest. Nonetheless, Christabel was given permission to see Peter in Ravensbrück after Christmas 1944. The journey across Germany in its death throes took 2 days. When they met, they clasped hands, and Peter managed to plant in her palm a matchbox that carried a message outlining the story he had told his interrogators about his involvement with Adam von Trott. She managed to convey in a conversational code that von Trott was dead, and that therefore Peter had no need to lie anymore to protect his friend during interrogations. On the 4th of January 1945, she was summoned to be interrogated by Herbert Lange at the Gestapo headquarters on Prince Albrechtstrasse in Berlin. Whilst waiting, her terror turned to anger when she saw a prisoner being hit by a woman typist. Herbert Lange was a mass murderer. He had studied law, worked in the Nazi administration, and then gone on to be involved in the mass murder of the mentally and physically sick in the Reichsgau-Vaterland. Then he headed a unit which killed Jewish people via mobile gas vans. Then he became the first commandant at the first Nazi death camp at Chełmno nad Nerem. Now he was leading the Gestapo's investigation into the July assassination attempt. Christabel wanted to make him believe that she and her husband had fallen into an assassin's circle out of sheer naivety, and at the same time as suggesting she had friends in high places in the United Kingdom. In a 1968 book she described him thus: "Now I could see him. It was no longer just a disembodied false voice, but a short, stocky, even younger man with a pear-shaped head. He had dark, thinning hair over a high, narrow forehead, plump cheeks, and a small mouth with thick lips. He was certainly no beauty, but it was the look in his eyes that made him so terrifying. They were lying close together, very small, very blue, very cold, and staring at me intensely and alertly." Lange was responsible for the deaths of tens of thousands of people. He had no pity. But he let Christabel go. Why? Presumably because she was British and he could see the end in front of him. By January 1945 it was obvious that the war was lost, and he probably thought that someone could put in a good word for him later. It may have been Lange who arranged for Peter Bielenberg to be transferred out of Ravensbrück and into a Wehrmacht punishment unit. The German bureaucracy was still functioning. It issued Peter Bielenberg with food stamps and a military train ticket and released him from prison with the necessary papers. However, instead of reporting for duty, Peter Bielenberg went to the Black Forest and hid in Rohrbach as a deserter. Christabel dedicated the second book of memories to the people of Rohrbach out of grateful recognition. The locals knew he was a deserter, but no one betrayed him. Lange was also transferred to the front. It appears that he was killed on or around the 20th of April 1945 in the vicinity of Bernau by Berlin. After the war, Christabel took her three sons to the United Kingdom, where she had them placed at a boarding school. She returned to Germany as the Observer's war correspondent. Peter had a job at the American Occupation Authority as an economic expert for a metal company and as an assessor in denazification. In 1948, they bought a dilapidated farm called Money House in Ireland to become farmers. Christabel was able to organise a British Foundation initiative for the surviving relatives of the German resistance fighters and secured the help of Countess Marion Dornhoff. On their farm in Ireland, they offered the widows and orphans of not only their friends Karl Langbein and Adam Trott zu Solz, but also other resistance fighters, a place where they had come for the summer, a place of refuge for many years. In 1944, she went to Grujons to visit her husband. As she was travelling back, she transited through Berlin. Whilst in the capital, she dropped in on her close friend Adam von Trott zu Solz. He had been long enough in the United Kingdom to have picked up a British sense of humour. He recommended that she write a book after the war, and he suggested the title for it, Life Amongst the Huns. Christabel did write a book, but she called it The Past Is Myself. Her second book was called The Road Ahead. After the publication of her first book, she was invited for readings in Germany as a contemporary witness. Her experiences during the Second World War were made into a BBC television drama series, Christabel, in 1988, adapted from her memoir by Dennis Potter. In 1974, Christabel Bielenberg described her experiences of attempting to shelter Jews hiding from persecution in the television series The World at War. She was made a commander of the German Federal Order of Merit on the 10th of December 1986, and she was awarded a Gold Medal of Merit by the European Parliament. Peter Bielenberg died on the 12th of March 2001 in Wexford, Ireland, aged 89. Christabel died on the 2nd of November 2003 in Tullow, County Carlow, Ireland, aged 94. I hope you found this interesting. You'll find on my channel lots of videos related to various subjects to do with the Second World War and in particular the Holocaust. I upload every Friday at 2000 hours my time, and I'm based in Poland and Germany. I also often upload on other days as well, and sometimes do live broadcasts. And if you'd like to know when I'm doing a live broadcast, then you can subscribe. For the moment, you might want to have a look at the playlist I have done on the history of Germany, where I've recounted similar stories to this one. Thanks for listening.